Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm very excited today to welcome my friend and a master of sales and relationship building, Joe McPheter, to the Leadership Studio. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you, Christine.
I wanted to give people a little bit of a tidbit of your awesomeness before we start. So I just want to read parts of his bio, and that Joe serves, just so you get a sense of who he is, not just a great guy, which you'll know by the end of this half an hour, but he serves as the market executive at KeyBank, where he has built a nearly 13-year tenure holding diverse positions within the commercial and corporate banking sectors. KeyBank, which is his bank, is a top 20 bank within the U.S., ranked by asset size with over 2 decades of experience in the banking industry. Joe has assumed pivotal sales and leadership roles across various segments. So listen for this. If you're in any of these segments, it's not just banking, right? It's retail, consumer lending, small to mid-sized corporate businesses. So he goes basically throughout the metro New York, Eastern Pennsylvania, and the state of New Jersey. 30 years experience in sales and service. And I love this part of your bio, that you live by your platinum rule, which is that people do more for the people they love and respect than they will do for money. Yes. Agreed. So I brought Joe in today to talk about a topic that a lot of you have asked me about or have something to do with, whether you know it or not. And in episode 29, we talked about customer service and how everybody is in the business of client care, even if your job isn't a customer service job. And today we're going to talk about sales and how everybody is in sales, whether your business card says that you're a salesperson or not, right? And the reason I brought Joe in is because he and I are absolutely aligned on this idea. And we love when we get together sharing ideas and sparking ideas on how this idea of sales can shift now to what it really is, which is not just a transactional agreement where money is exchanged, but there's something deeper going on. And so I wanted to bring up that idea and welcome Joe to kind of help talk about it from his perspective. And then I'm going to add something. But Joe, if you'll just indulge me for 1 second, because I don't usually do this, but my dad was a salesperson. Okay. Both my parents were salespeople, but my dad was a salesperson and he's not doing so good right now. So I talked to him yesterday and made me think of this topic, made me think of him. And I wanted to share this one story with everybody. When I was in middle school, we had a career day, right? And everybody, you know, the parents who had the very shiny jobs, right? I grew up in Texas. It's my Texas history class. So it was really big. We had like 90 kids in this class, right? There's 3 different teachers, big, huge classroom. And they were going to all the kids who had pilot parents or lawyers or doctors, right? And I'm like, you know, the kid that's like, my parents will come, you know, my dad will come. And of course, they only go to dads at this point. No moms were even thought of in the picture, right? In the early 80s, even though both my parents were working, it was like dads would come to career day. So nobody really wanted my dad to come. They had all these other folks, and the teacher was like, well, what does your dad do? And I'm like, he's a salesperson. Da, da, da. She's like, no, thank you. And then they get all these other folks in. Well, then one of the guys couldn't come. And so she comes up to me. She's like, Christine, what does your dad do again? And I'm like, well, he's a food broker. And she's like, I don't know what that is, but okay, if he can make it, you know, can he come Monday? I'm like, yes, we'll make it. And I went home to my dad. I'm like, Dad, we got the deal, right? We got this. It's like we had already won. I'd already sold the teacher on my dad, right? So then he's like, come, okay, Christine, we're going to my office this weekend. We went to his office and we spent all day on Sunday making, because he was a food broker, we would make these Ziploc bags because Ziploc was one of his clients. And we would fill them with all of these. Basically, we made swag bags before swag bags existed. We filled it with coupons. We filled it with Kool-Aid things, whatever his products were that he sold, we put a version of in these little Ziplocs. We made 90 of them, plus, you know, 3 for the teachers. So when we went in that day, my dad had stuff, you know? So before him, because he's no dummy, he lets the other parents go first, and they're terrible, right? They cannot imagine making being an airline pilot sound so boring, right? So the kids were like, oh, snooze fest. And then the lawyer, worse, the doctor, worse, you know, these really interesting jobs. And then I'm like, oh my God, my dad is coming into a very quiet audience, you know? And then my dad comes in, and I remember sitting there just more like my face was red with nervousness. And he comes up and he's like, Christine, pass out what we got for these folks. And I start passing out the things. And he goes, how many of you in here want to be a salesperson when you grow up? Nobody, I think there were 3 people that raised their hand right in this room of 90. He looks around and he goes, well, that's too bad because about 80% of you are gonna be. So you better listen up.
Love it.
And then they
Love
were
it.
fixated. And then he said to this football player in the room, he goes, hey, you, come here. You look pretty strong. You think you can break this trash bag? This yellow, and it was a yellow trash bag, right? It's called yellow bags. That was one of his clients, his lines. And the kid was like, yeah, sure, middle school football player. So he starts putting his fist through this yellow bag. So my dad does a live demo of the garbage bag, for the 90 kids. And everyone's like, wow, even Joe can't break that yellow bag. So then my dad makes it completely interactive, whatever. For the rest of the day, I was on cloud 9. I was like the most popular kid in school. Everyone's like, wow, your dad's so great. Your dad's so great. Teachers would tell me I'm buying yellow bags. Like, not only that, he was selling product, right, while we were there.
That's awesome.
But anyway, it changed my life. That moment changed my life because I realized in that moment that everything is an experience. And whatever I do in my life, I want to create that magic out of the most mundane situation that it possibly can. And so in that moment, not only did he sell his stuff, he sold all those kids on that whatever job you have can be exciting and dynamic, but he also sold me on like how great a parent you can be, how great you can represent. I don't know. I just was today, I'm getting choked up thinking about it, but
I am too. And I don't know him, but just the story itself is choking me up.
Yeah. And I think about him, and I think that made such an impression on me at an age when nothing would make an impression on a middle schooler. So with that, I come with a lot of love for the work that you do and for a lot of people who are in sales, but also for those of us out there who maybe don't think of ourselves in sales, but we are actually selling all the time. So now with that big intro, Joe, talk to me about how you think about sales, because I know that it's somewhat different than how most people do.
Yeah. First, let me just say, I would love to know how many of the 90 people in that room ended up in sales, which I'm sure was a lot. And I bet you your dad inspired some of them to do that. I'd be willing to bet
I'll say at my 25th reunion, high school reunion, people still talked about it. They were like, remember when your dad came?
That's fantastic.
So who knows? Yeah.
I bet your dad was a master of building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, in today's world, sales is about relationships. Transactions are done online. We buy from Amazon. We don't have a relationship with them. We just pick up something, we order it, we walk to a store, we buy a bottle of water. But the real sales in life, whether it's insurance, it's finance, it's buying a car, it's buying a house, it's buying anything of significance, is built on a relationship. And salespeople have to very quickly figure out how to connect with people. The best people are very observant. They observe the person that they're talking to. I tell people all the time, if you cannot listen, you're not going to be good at sales.
Yeah.
90% of the time, the person is going to tell you what makes them buy, what's important to them, how they like to buy. They're giving you the keys, but unfortunately, a lot of salespeople get fixated on what they want to sell instead of listening to the individual and absorbing the information and then finding a way to connect. I've been selling stuff for more than 30 years in many different ways and in service. And the other side of it is the service side. No one in today's environment wants to do business with someone they don't trust, that they don't believe in. I don't care what it is. They want to feel connected. In the world where we're so virtual, we're so distant in so many ways, when people are spending a significant amount of money or they're making a significant decision on their business, on their home, on their family, they want to feel good about it. And they want to feel good about the person they do business with. And how do you achieve that? You listen to them. You find out what's important. Any salesperson needs to remember that you can sell something. And if someone goes home and then they sit down and they start analyzing and they don't feel good about it, they get buyer's remorse. But if you made them feel good, you follow up, you communicate, you do the check-ins, people feel better about spending their money, spending their time, investing in someone's business. So I think it's a really important part of it. I love listening to people. I think that's why we get along so well. You're such a great listener.
Or a great talker.
Both sides.
I have to remind myself to be a good listener sometimes. Yeah.
I think that happens to me as well. But that's normal. I think when you're outgoing and you like to build relationships, which I know you do, you are always finding a way to connect with people, right? That's the one thing I noticed about you in the very beginning. You're listening for that opportunity to find that connection so you can build upon it. And it can't just be one thing, right? There's so many minor things in the sales process. I know we talked about this, but in 2000, I think it was 2007, I was working for a bank and I was actually in the small business space. And I was always known as a good sales guy. Met this particular company, we're going to call it Box Inc. And the CEO, really nice guy. We had good conversations. At one point I was in the fire service, so I had like a little, what we consider paramilitary background, but he was in the military for many years. There was like ribbons on his wall. He was part of like the Purple Heart Foundation, all this stuff. But we got along and we had a good rapport, but there wasn't that part where he wanted to really come in and hug me and do business with me. And I just kept trying and trying to find these different things. And one day I go back to my office and I'm sitting there and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, why can't I get this guy in all the way? My boss is asking me. I look across the hall at another guy, call him John, and I go, come over here for a second. I was like, you were in the Army, weren't you? He's like, yeah, I was in Germany. I was here, there. And I was like, I'm going to introduce you to this prospect. He's like, what? I'm like, I'm going to give you, he's my colleague, but I can't close the deal. So I said, I want to introduce you. I want to see if this changes. Next opportunity, about a month later, introduce him at a dinner, like a networking event, off to the races, brings in the business within like 2 or 3 months. And I do believe is because they had that shared experience of the military, that there was a bonding that could happen there that wasn't happening with me.
Yeah, like a shorthand.
Yeah. You just get that level of comfort. And that's why we're all selling every day, right?
Yeah.
We're always trying to sell our comfort, our trust, our abilities, our friendship, whatever it is. And we're building connections. There is no relationships without connections.
I love that. So there's 2 things. One, I just want to, the story that you shared, what I love about it is that you had to make a decision at some point, right? And I think it's a very mature decision, because I know most salespeople probably, especially younger in their career, wouldn't have made that decision, right? Because would want that sale, would want that individual number on their books. And so we just keep trying, pushing. But it really takes, a sense of step back, reflect on it, and to put your ego aside a little bit, and to remember that sales, what I heard from you is that sales can be and should be a team sport, in a way of like looking at your team going, wait a minute, is there a way? Because the most important thing is not me and my numbers, but the bigger picture in this. And will this guy have a stronger connection, be more connected to our company or our product or whatever, with somebody else as that person who's connected, who he's with? And I think that takes a big person. And I think if more of us looked at ways to work as a team in sales, we could probably have better results, just like you said. The other thing you mentioned, I love, and I don't want to skip over it because I think it's really important to a lot of our audience out there, is that even if you're not in sales, that idea of you're selling something. Daniel Pink came out with a book a few years back called To Sell is Human. And I loved it because it really talked about how stop thinking of the salesperson as the, guy that shows up at your door trying to, sell you a vacuum cleaner or whatever. There's a much deeper thing that's happening. And not only is just sales the biggest occupation in the United States, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, but it's also even bigger than that, because 1 in 9 people are salespeople. But then there's they said people, in his book, he says people are now spending about 40% of their time at work engaged in what he calls non-sales selling, which is persuading, influencing, and convincing others in ways that don't even involve making a purchase. Across every profession, we are devoting roughly 24 minutes of every hour to moving others in some way, right? That persuasive negotiating. So I thought that was really interesting. And also, you just mentioned it too. Like, how often are we doing this? Even in our personal lives, how often am I doing it with my kids, my husband, whatever? We're selling something. It just shouldn't have that kind of negative connotation that it sometimes has.
Yeah, for a long time, I think I was nervous about using that word sales, of being in sales, because I think we associate it to a used car salesperson, right? They'll tell you anything, get you in the car to drive off the lot so they can make their money. The fact of the matter is, even that is changing, right?
Yeah.
Consumers are smarter than they've ever been, and they're not going to get dumber, right? They're only going to get more intelligent. And, as a salesperson, I always think you never want to be the smartest person in the room when you're a salesperson, right? In our business, I'm dealing with some amazing entrepreneurs, some amazing CEOs, and you get past that concern of being smart, listening, once again, taking in the room, learning from other people, asking good questions, challenging yourself to be uncomfortable, if they say something, go, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't understand what you mean by that. Can you explain it a little bit more? Which can be intimidating. You may be the only person in the room who doesn't know, but I'm going to tell you, the right people are going to be inspired that you asked, and they're going to want to invest more, that you want to know more, and you're not pretending. Relationship selling in our business, in the banking side, is I'm in a commodity-based business. The money I sell is green at every single bank. The prices are slightly different. What matters is the person that's doing it, right? How they care about their clients, how they care about what they do every day. Like I look at it as my team is providing the financing to keep companies growing, employing people, making positive impacts on the economy, which has positive effects across the board. Now, as a salesperson, I always appreciated, FYI, I've never worked for a top 5 bank. And there's a reason why. Nothing against them. I like being the underdog a little bit, right? I like having to work for it a little bit more, right? I can go to a bigger bank and sell names everywhere. I like having to work for it. I like being able to really dive in with a company and customize where the bigger banks can't. So from the relationship standpoint, my team is going in trying to be a trusted advisor, taking the position of, all right, your business in distribution. I know I have a lot of clients in that space. Let me share some of the things I hear from there, how you might be able to make your business efficient. I've heard what you need. Let me find a way to get the bank comfortable and get you the capital you need. And when we do that and we spend the time, and I can tell you as a salesperson, I did this, and I'm going to say I was very good at it. People are willing to pay more because they know there's someone invested in their business, right? I would have clients who say to me, they'd ask a question, or I would run something off on their company. They were like, I can't believe how much you know about my business, because I've invested the time to learn it, because I want to be able to deliver the greatest part of value. And I found that when you are truly focused on the growth of their business, they don't have a problem with paying a little bit more. And from a teamwork perspective, having been the underdog, I need every person on my team to win. That is a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Right? When they do a great job for that client, they're going to tell 2 other people. If I don't give that deal over to somebody else to win, we're not multiplying, right? My marketing budget is nowhere near to a lot of our competition. What I tell people, advertising and marketing is in the mirror. You have to develop your brand, and you have to go to market with a strong philosophy and hold true to that and deliver and be a crusader of customer service.
Yeah.
Right? You have to stand up for your client. You have to stand up for your organization. Sometimes you're the mediator. In our business, we're between the bank and the client, and we have to figure out how to get everybody okay and happy.
Yeah, I love that you brought up customer service, because it's so much easier to keep the customers you have and grow them, or get them to recommend other people, than it is to find brand new prospects, right? It's so much easier. God.
Easier and cost effective. The amount of hours that a salesperson will spend to find out someone doesn't want to do business with them or can't deliver, we don't have the solution to provide for them, is very, very expensive. So when someone's ready to walk out the door, you need to understand and ask the question of, why are they leaving? Is it, could we have done it better? And investing in keeping them is really important. Now, in our business, there's times where credits go south. There's instances where we have to make really hard decisions for the safety and soundness of our business. But that doesn't stop you from having the conversation and explaining why you're making the decisions. Not every relationship ends in permanent marriage in our business. Most of them do. Most of our clients stay for a very long time, but sometimes we do have to part ways. But there's a way of doing it. And I've actually had people where we've parted ways still recommend me because of how we've handled it. Most people that do business with me, I'm never going to not tell you the truth. I'm probably going to tell you the things you don't want to hear. I'm going to be empathetic to your situation, but I will always be honest.
And what you just described, I could take that slice of what you said and put that to being a good leader, to being a good manager, like to being a good parent. All of those things are the same things, right? It's not different in sales. And I think that's what some people sometimes think, is that there's some magic answer to being or finding great salespeople. Because if you ask folks who run companies, they're always looking, they think the magic thing is to find some great salesperson that's going to come in and make us successful because they're such a sales hunter, sales dynamo. And I'm always trying to figure out, like, is that true? Or how do we switch that around? Can anybody be a good salesperson? I have people ask me that all the time. Like, what would you say? Do you think it's a combination of who you are and some training? Do you think what do you think folks out there that are going, can I be better at this? What would be your advice to them?
So I would say this. I do believe anyone could be a great salesperson. if they're willing to do the work and be uncomfortable, right? Because there's rejection in sales. That's the thing that people are scared of.
Yeah, you're right.
They don't want to be told no. They don't want to lose. They don't want to feel like they didn't do it all the way. They didn't achieve and win. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? I think there are a lot of people that are very good at it. Many years ago when I started in banking, I started in retail, I started hiring salespeople, and my regional manager thought I was insane because I started hiring bartenders, cell phone salespeople, waiters and waitresses. And he's like, what are you doing? These people have no banking experience. I said, well, neither do I, honestly. I was like, I have an operations person. We have 6 months of banking school. We can train them with this. I can't train people to learn how to talk to people and listen. 6 months later, 9 months later, he's in a room telling everyone they got to think bigger and broader and start hiring people that know how to talk to people, because we opened a branch and a year later, we were like number 10 in the country out of 2,100.
Yeah.
Because the people I hired knew how to engage people.
Right. How to engage people. So you're either going to have to be able to comfortable starting a conversation, also listening. I love that. And also, what was the thing that you said that I thought was great? Oh, be ready for rejection, right?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. Like, how does one get better at feeling okay with rejection?
Hearing it more.
The opposite of what you want is the answer.
It is the opposite of what you want to hear. But the fact of the matter is no different than going to the gym. You go to the gym one day and you lift some weights and you're sore the next day. The next time you go and you do it 3-4 times, you're not sore anymore. All right. The same thing with hearing rejection. The more times you hear it, the less it's impactful, because eventually after those no's, a yes comes. So when you start accepting the fact that every no is going to lead you closer to a yes, you start getting fired up about that. And what I would also tell salespeople, when you get your yes, do not stop. That is the point where you double down and you sell even harder. Call the person that refused the last time, didn't take the meeting, because you have an energy that you put out that's a positive and it shows strength, and people get engaged with that. Keep going until you get another yes.
You know, early in my life, I was an actor, and there was so much rejection in acting, right? Especially once I moved to New York, and you'd have to go on all these auditions, and you'd have to get yourself psyched up for them, and then, not get something or not get a call. And I remember I met this one Irish young woman. We were both young girls at the time. And I said, oh my God, you're going to another audition? How can you do it? Like, I'm just so tired of it. And of the rejection. She goes, oh no, I'm just trying to get my 50. And I said, what? And she goes, I'm just trying to get my 50 because I read that for every 50 auditions, you will book one. So all I'm doing is trying to get my 50 rejections, because I know then by the statistics, I will book one. And more often than not, it comes before 50. So then I'm not surprised. And so that's how she would do it. I mean, even into when she was older, she would keep auditioning without feeling that pain. Whereas for me, it was such an emotional turmoil every time that I finally was like, okay, give me a different kind of job. This one is rough.
But it is rejection.
Yeah.
It's not fun in any way, shape, or form. But the stronger and the more common we accept that it leading us to a positive, we will embrace it.
Yeah.
And I have some salespeople who work for me and relationship managers that I think were even better salespeople than I was. And what happens is when you get really good at your job, you want even less rejection. When you're really at the top, you want to take your shot when you know you're going to hit it. And as a leader, you've got to push those people. They know it in the back of their head. They have to go out and get more no's, but their bravios gets a little bit more. When I want it, I get it. Push a little bit more. Push them as a leader. Make them go out and get their no's again. Because you know what? The best people get inspired over it after a while. Getting that deal you didn't think you can do, following up. Another thing that I started doing 10 years ago, and it was definitely uncomfortable in my business. We put out a pitch. Here, this is what we're offering, delivering. They're talking to 3 other banks. You don't hear back. You don't win. I'd wait 60, 90 days, reach back out to the company. And I'd say, listen, I would just love to know why you chose them over us. And it really was why you chose him over me or her over me. That's the truth of it, right? And 40% of the time people will respond, pick up the phone call. Listen, I thought this, that, or the other thing. That feedback was so important. What I said was not heard, or I didn't say it the right way that engaged them properly. So then I had to be more thoughtful. I recommend this to salespeople all the time. Ask people why not you, but doing it in a very open way that you're not trying to convince them that they made a wrong decision.
Yeah.
Don't be like, oh, I said that. You just accept it. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's interesting. keep notes and then just say, thank you so much for sharing that information with me. I really hope to be better at this over time. And it's important that I know where I failed you. Leave it be. Feedback, getting feedback also can be very emotional, challenging, like a no. You know, but growth comes from these uncomfortable situations.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because I can look back, even listening to you, I can look back very recently in conversations that I've had where I've been kind of pushing like our training or pushing the way that our model, and thinking, especially with a new client that I don't know so well and I'm a little nervous. When I'm nervous, my go-to is to talk more. And so I found myself, when I listen to you now, I'm like, I should have said something very short in the beginning and then got to some good questions quicker to find out what they're like and their style, because then I could have adapted which part of what we do to that. And so I, if I could go back, that's what I would do. But I'm sure I'll have another opportunity, because I'm going to write them a note and maybe say something to that effect, because you're inspiring me, Joe. But I'm curious to that end. I think folks like myself that are comfortable kind of like jumping in, talking about ourselves, and sometimes need a little reminder or a little technique to ask some questions earlier in the conversation. And I was curious if you had some just good opening questions that people can get the conversation going with.
That's a great question, by the way. And I don't say that jokingly just to say it, because I'm going to use it from a networking perspective, right? Because whether you're in the room learning someone or you're at a networking event, we love to ask business owners, how did you get here? Tell me the story of you from where it started to here. And most business owners will tell you it all. They will tell you about their champions. They'll tell you about their failures. They'll talk to you about your stumbles. They will give you the entire story of where they got there. You can do it at networking events. Tell me how you ended up in the business that you're in. I bet you that's a great question. You would love to, if someone asked you that question, Christine, how did you get to where you are today? Tell me the road. You learn so much about a person.
And then are you just taking like mental notes as they talk to you?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. If it's in the room, if they're talking about the business, I do a lot of 1 or 2 word notes to myself just to re-trigger that thought process. So I can go back and say, you said this, and I wanted to dig in a little bit about this. What was that struggle like when your business was short on capital? How did you address that? Just 1 or 2 notes. I personally don't do my notebooks. People look at them, they're like, there's just like a lot of like words on a paper. There's no sentences. I'm like, no, because all I need is to activate that memory.
Trigger words. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you want to be engaged, right? Keep eye contact and talking to them, listening to them.
It's hard. I'm writing it all down, trying to look at you at the same time. Some people are good at it. I've seen people really good at it. Not me.
Okay. Well, in our last part of this, people love when we can give them some tips, right? So some things they can get better at, some things there's tons of sales training out there and stuff, but really like a lot of this, you've given so many good little nuggets already. But what is a tip or a technique that people can use, whether it's in a networking situation or with maybe, some sort of sales situation?
Well, I would say go back to getting the no's. Get comfortable with the no's. And it's not just in the sales. And you can practice this very, very simply. You go to a restaurant and they give you a table. Is there a better table? Can I have that one? They say no. Okay. If they say yes, you won.
I love that. So you're practicing not on high stakes things. I'm like,
no.
Interesting. Okay. In your life, just trying to get rejection.
Absolutely. You go to a hotel. Can I get an upgrade?
Joseph McPheter.
No.
What are you telling us? That's brilliant. Okay. Oh, wow.
So
I'm already uncomfortable thinking about that, but I'm writing that down. That's good.
I'm telling you, ask for the little things, get used to hearing no. It matters less when you hear no. So do it across your life. The other side of it is, I think it's really, really important, and I can't stress this enough, to build the listening muscle. Pause, don't interrupt. Write down the word that's going to trigger your thought that you can respond when they're done, right? Build the listening muscle. And you can do it in every part of your life, with your children, with your family, with your spouse. Let them finish the entire story and then go in and give the other side of it. And I've learned through the years, it takes a lot of work, especially I think sometimes when you want to fix, just wait. Sometimes they're just going to fix the problem themselves. They just want to vent it. But be active listening.
Wait, hold on with that, because I think, I think most people that go into sales or that get a lot of good feedback right away from sales tend to be talkers, right? Have the gift of the gab in the beginning. And then they hit
Yep.
some sort of stumbling block along the way because they probably don't have this listening muscle that's going to stop you from a certain kind of success. I mean, I love, first of all, the bartender is a perfect example of somebody who has to have the combination of those two things, right? A great bartender listens and engages and starts connection, but also like listens to you. So that's great. But what about when you have your folks, how are you training that muscle with them? How are you giving them feedback on getting better at this?
So I would say the greatest opportunity for me, for a leader from the coaching perspective, is being at the meetings with them and really trying to be quiet and let them do what they do and let the CEO, the CFO talk and communicate. And then I do a debrief after. And I tell me what you saw, what do we hear, break it down. And then I usually will drop out, did you hear this? Did you hear this? Did you hear this? Or you interrupted them, let them speak more, and give them that direct feedback and pretty immediate. Like that's the most important part. You have to be careful if it's emotional, but getting feedback in the moment, I think for me is very valuable. I want to know so I can associate it with that emotion and lock it in, right? I would say some of the salespeople I have are exceptional. Like they are truly masters and they can sell jet planes. They can sell finance. They can sell yachts. They can sell anything they want. They choose to be in this business, but it all comes down to the listening, you have to be a man of your word and a woman of your word, right? Don't overpromise. That's really, really important because people remember when you don't deliver. Mm-hmm. They definitely remember more that you don't deliver than you do deliver.
Yeah, that's true.
So be very careful about that.
Yeah.
I'm very careful on promising what I can't deliver.
Yeah.
But I love giving active feedback. And the best salespeople, I have a young man on our team now who is so coachable.
Coachable, be coachable. I love that.
And we have to be at all levels. I don't care if you're 20, I don't care if you're 60. If you're not open to hearing from people you respect, feedback, that's going to hinder your growth.
Yeah. Also, listening. I love that, developing that listening muscle, because I think you're right. It is a muscle. And if you think of it like the gym, you've got to keep getting back in there. We did do an episode, I think it's number 36, on listening and listening techniques. So I recommend for those of you who want to work on that listening muscle, there's lots of techniques in episode 36 for you on listening, because it is so key to this, because you really, I think you said it right away. Listening is the key to relationship building, and relationship building is sales. Unless you're, I guess, Amazon and even, but that they're
providers.
They don't need sales. They have a distribution. Anyways.
Last thing I would say.
Yes.
One last thing I would say, be authentic. All right. If you are not the salesperson you want to be, become the salesperson you want to be, right? Be by your word, stand by your word, be authentic. Tell people if you're not the right product for them. Be honest. They will remember that. They will recommend you because you didn't lead them down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Be authentic. Be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Authenticity, Joe, was interesting because that was the word of the year last year.
Was it?
Yeah, according to, I think it was Webster's or Oxford, one of the dictionaries. So we did a whole episode on authenticity, episode 16. I'm just doing a plug because it's I'm selling it for that, because I agree with you. Authenticity is so big, and it's the opposite, unfortunately, of what we think of salespeople. We think of salespeople as inauthentic. We see them, like you said, those used car salesmen that are, no offense, used car salesmen out there, but like, we think of it that way. And I really want to help redefine this brand because, for years, like I said, I grew up with two salespeople as parents, and I thought that is the last thing I'm going to be. I went into theater and then into running a company and then into this. And all I'm doing really, sales. All I'm doing is persuading people on something my entire life. And so it turns out that having that training with my parents, one of a very outgoing father and a very introverted mother who was still head of sales for a huge corporation because she was good at building relationships and she was authentic to who she was. She had a lot of guys who worked for her that were super outgoing and, would make those connections, but she was very quiet in how she did it. And I just want to say that the statistics also are showing that the more that women get into sales, the better their numbers are becoming, even better than men.
Absolutely.
Because I think that women have a little bit of a natural experience with listening and that's changing, but we see that with women leaders as well. And so that I think for those of you out there who think, oh, there's just a lot of dudes in my sales department, don't get scared, because what's happening is what Joe described as this new kind of sales, relationship selling. Women are really thriving in it. So, get in there, even if it can be a little intimidating. Start with that. So Joe, thank you so much for coming. It was such a pleasure to have you today. And I'm sure that we'll have you back again because this is a big topic that we constantly need to be working on. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Such a good time. Always happy to be here. And I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you guys for listening.
Have a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.